Hello, this is Hooked by Happenstance. I'm Kendra, and it is time for chapter 22 of Yarn Tales. Now, Yarn Tales is my ongoing series here at Hooked by Happenstance, where I read books, I tell you a bit about them, and then I apply silly Kendra rules to my rating, and in this particular instance, a little something extra. And I add a segment to my reading shawl. Now, my reading shawl is an ongoing project to make a tangible product from intangible reading. And it is a way for me to physically log all of the things that I've been reading this year. Now, today's book is called Why We Make Things and Why It Matters by Peter Korn. It was the first book that I read during Buzzwordathon. Now, Buzzwordathon was a readathon that took place in March for 1 week, and it was meant to be reading the buzzwords. Now, originally, and most of the time on Buzzwordathon, they do one word at a time. But this time, it was who, what, where, when, why, and how. And this was the book that I read for why. Now, some of the books for Buzzwordathon I read with my kids, some of them I read in physical form by myself, and some of them I read via audiobook. This particular book was the first one I delved into for the readathon because I thought it would be the most difficult for me to get through. And I listened to it via audiobook. I listened to it through RV Digital, which is the digital audiobook service that I get through my state library from the state of Kansas. So I always remind people to check multiple sources for online access to ebooks, audiobooks, and that sort of thing. It is likely that you have the ability to sign up for a library card through your local libraries as well as state and county libraries. There's lots of options for most people, and I mean, I live rurally and I have multiple options, so if you live in a bigger city, you probably have a lot of options, so there's no reason to let having to pay for books hold you back from reading them. So, I had seen this book before as I'd scrolled through and just kind of seen what the options were in different categories. This fell under arts and entertainment, which is not a genre that I ordinarily go for. But on the cover, I mean, this sounds like a title that might have Kendra written all over it. Why We Make Things and Why It Matters is like a question or two questions that are like near and dear to my heart. I have lots to say on the difference between arts and crafts and what we term what. I have lots of thoughts about the reasons emotionally and the reasons practically that people make things and the reasons why they don't. And so I have lots of thoughts on this issue. So I was really excited to read this book. It is written by a man who at this point owns a woodworking school. He is a craftsman in the wood arts. And so I figured there was a good chance this was going to be really interesting to me. I was wrong. I gave this book 1 star. I did listen to the whole thing, all 5 hours and 37 minutes of the audiobook. Now I did speed it up a little, but still, it was a long time for me to read this book. I had multiple issues with it. First of all, the author and I disagree with what is craft? There was a beginning part where he was explaining it and I thought I bought into it, and he was talking about handmade items and artistry and craftsmanship, and then as it goes through, his craftsmanship seems to be like, let's see what's popular and marketable and copy what other people are doing. And everything he could talk about his style was just talking about it in terms of other people's work and how he was basically being derivative. And that to me is not creating. That to me is copying, which just bothered me. Also, this is a memoir, so it goes through the story of his life from when he leaves college as like a hippie, and he's worried about the draft, and his plan is to keep putting off the draft by being in school, and then if the draft is still going when he's out of college, he plans to go to Canada. Throughout the whole book, I had major issues with the privilege that this man had. I hate putting a 1 star on somebody's memoir. Like, it's his story. I don't want to disregard it, but he disregards a lot of other people's stories throughout, so I kind of feel like, I don't know. He survives through a lot of this doing his crafts by like getting a monthly stipend check that his dad sends him because he basically can't make ends meet doing what he's doing, but he really just wants to keep doing what he's doing. And through a bunch of it, it does sound like he's just flitting around. And it's not even like he's inspired by what he's doing and the woodworking. It just seems, I don't know. I just never got a good, like, I have read books about people's experience just being dragged along by their art. And this did not feel like that to me. At one point, I guess it's worth noting that the author gets cancer during the book, which some people might go, oh, that's a spoiler. But it's a spoiler that I would have liked to have. I really wish, you know, for all the things they trigger warning books, it would be nice to just like know whether or not a character in the book's gonna get cancer. Because like, I know I went through a period of time where I would, like, I didn't want to read books about people that were going through cancer treatment at all. And I think a lot of people go through times where that is the case. And so it will be like a nice thing to like warn people about. So if I read books and the people get cancer, I will let you know. It happened. He obviously goes into remission because he continues on doing more of his crafts and ultimately opening the school. I also had some problems with the school that he opens because, well, it's a school. It only takes like 6 or 8 students at a time. And I get that woodworking takes up a lot of space, and so there's only so many people you can take on. But this school becomes a nonprofit, and it really just sounds like it becomes a nonprofit because he doesn't want to give up the school, but he is not in a position to make money for a period of time. And so it becomes a charity when it doesn't sound charitable. It sounds like a business that should be under all the normal business rules. I don't know. There was just so many things about this book that bothered me. The one thing that I did take away from it, in feeling like he just droned on and on without acknowledging any of his privileges, it definitely, as he was going through and talking about these different areas of his life and all these people that had helped him to get where he was and all the people he clearly did not appreciate in the process, or at least didn't make any of that clear in his book, it made me consider all the people in my life who helped me to accomplish the things that go on and appreciate them. And it helped me to appreciate all of the privileges in my own life and the things that are advantageous that, like, I am fully aware of. And I think it would be good if he had been more aware of those. I guess also at some point, he mentions toward the end of the book that he basically stops actually making woodworking stuff and he becomes primarily a writer about woodwork. And he actually had a column in, I think, the Chicago Tribune. It was something like that. He had a woodworking column for years. I don't know. This book was just, it was not for me. And I don't know if it was not for me because I had built it up to be something it wasn't, or if it was not for me because it was just a bad take, or what. But if I were you, I would just skip this one. If you feel passionate about an art, I would skip this one. Maybe it would be better if you were somebody that didn't feel passionate about an art. Maybe that, like, if you didn't feel yourself a maker, then reading this, you'd be like, ooh, that must be what it feels like to be a maker. But I read it and I was like, there is zero passion to what you're doing. Yeah. So apparently all I have to say is silence and pausing. That was my reaction to this book. But I did finish it because I kept feeling like maybe there's going to be some, like, big thing at the end. Like, maybe he's gonna have a point, even if I don't like how he got there. Maybe there's gonna, no. No. And the few points that I did feel like, ooh, I can buy into that, they're just all the basic self-help things that everybody says. They're all just like, I mean, there's stuff that could go on a poster with a cat hanging off it, like a little motivational poster. It's all that junk that, I mean, you can get anywhere. You don't need to read someone's individual memoir to get that. So, I don't know. But for a disappointing book, it did make for a nice segment of my shawl. So let's take a look at that. I decided to do something special for books that are parts of readathons. And that special thing is I decided to add beads to those segments because that seems like a good idea. And as I was doing this, I thought, Kendra, you did this last time you added beads. You thought if a few beads are good, a lot of beads are better. I held back though. I could have put more beads in this. So here we go. What I did is every one of these sections, there's different yarns for different kinds of books. There's yarn for books that I read via audiobook by myself, which is like this one. Books I read with my kids, books for my Life's Library subscription, and books that I read in physical form. So each of those yarns then has a patterned row that goes with it. And this patterned row happens to have a double crochet and then some chains and then a single crochet. So for each of the single crochets, I went ahead and slipped a bead on there. And I did this like kind of blue color because I thought that it brought out the blue and the other things. And since this is my blue shawl, that was where I wanted to lean. And I really, really like the way the beads turned out. We'll see how it looks when the next row goes on, especially because obviously I didn't have a lot of yarn to play with after the patterned row because it got 1 star. So it got 1 row. But I do think that while this was a disappointment on my reading front, I think it will be good for my shawl because it does add some interest. I had so many good books in a row. Like, look at all those huge stripes that it's kind of nice to have a little patterned row with a single, and then there'll be another patterned row on top. So we'll see how this shakes out and how the beads look through the rest of the books that I read for Buzzwordathon, because I read several. In the week we got through most of the words. So that will be fun going forward. If you would like to make sure you don't miss out on any of those videos, make sure you subscribe down below. These videos don't come out on a regulated schedule, so that's the best way to just let them float into your feed when I publish them. There's also a playlist here on the channel of all of the Yarn Tales videos if you want to make sure you haven't missed out on any of the books that I've been reading. And there's also a playlist for last year's Yarn Tales, which was another reading shawl in a slightly different format. So that is all out there for you. I hope that you all have a great whenever you see this, and I will see you next time.